Winter has a way of exposing how fragile modern comfort really is. One power outage, one failed heater, and suddenly the cold becomes personal. If you're watching Warfield Prepper Chronicles, you're not here for cozy myths or recycled advice. You're here because history solved problems long before electricity, and those solutions still work. If you value practical historical knowledge, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment with the coldest night you've ever endured. Now let's get straight to the method. This method centers on bed enclosure rather than blanket thickness. You know, pre-modern Europeans, especially from the late medieval period right through to the First World War, understood something that, well, modern bedding often ignores. Heat, it turns out, escapes upward and sideways long before it ever escapes downward. Their answer wasn't to pile on heavier blankets, but rather to control the airspace around them. The core hack, really, was turning the bed into a sort of micro-environment where warm air stayed trapped around the body all night long. This was achieved by layering from the bottom up and enclosing from the sides inward. Straw mattresses, wool pads, or even layered fabric sacks were placed beneath the sleeper to block conductive heat loss to those cold frames and floors. On top, instead of just tossing on loose throws, blankets were tucked aggressively along the sides and foot of the bed, sealing in that precious warm air pocket. The goal was not comfort, but containment. You can apply this today by placing a dense insulating layer beneath your mattress, such as folded wool blankets, old duvets, or even cardboard if supplies are limited. Then use fewer blankets on top, but seal them tightly around your body rather than draping them loosely. By the 17th century, enclosed beds were common across cold regions of Europe. Bed curtains, wooden box beds, and later iron frames with heavy drapery were not luxury items. They were, in fact, thermal technology. These structures reduced air movement, which is really the primary enemy of retained body heat during sleep. In rural homes, box beds were built directly into walls to block drafts. In military camps and First World War barracks, soldiers improvised similar effects using coats, canvas and spare cloth to block wind around their sleeping area. The principle was consistent: reduce airflow and trap warmth close to the body. Modern application is simple and effective. Hang heavy fabric around the bed using curtain rods, ropes, or even paracord. If that's not possible, push the bed against a wall and block open sides with thick blankets draped over chairs or furniture. The difference in overnight warmth is immediate, especially in unheated rooms. So, before the days of central heating, folks would actually warm their beds on purpose before heading off to sleep. Hot bricks, stones, or even metal bed warmers, were tucked between the blankets to boost the temperature inside the bed. It wasn't really about being cozy right at bedtime, but rather it was about saving the body some energy that would otherwise be spent trying to heat up the bed once you'd already drifted off. This approach, well, it stopped that early night heat loss, which, as it turns out, is when most people tend to wake up feeling chilly. By starting out with a nice warm microclimate, your body could just keep things toasty, instead of constantly battling the cold. These days, hot water bottles, heated stones wrapped in cloth, or even just warmed clothing placed under the covers can really do the same job. The key thing is to position them near your feet or your core, and, remember to remove any hard objects before you fall into a deep sleep, especially if safety is on your mind. Pre-modern bedding actually followed a logic that, honestly, modern bedding marketing tends to ignore. The bottom layer was all about insulation, the middle layer took care of absorbing moisture, and the top layer was there to trap heat. Linen sheets, for example, absorbed sweat to keep the insulation dry. Wool blankets, on the other hand, provided heat retention, even if they got a bit damp. And then heavy outer coverings really sealed the system. Many people today stack synthetic blankets without understanding moisture management. Sweat accumulates, insulation fails, and cold sets in. Using breathable natural materials where possible dramatically improves warmth retention. A practical setup today would be cotton or linen sheets, wool or wool blend blankets, and a dense outer cover such as a quilt or sleeping bag. The order matters more than the number of layers. Historical records show people slept closer together, curled slightly, and wore nightcaps or head coverings. Heat loss through the head and extremities was well understood. Nightcaps were not fashion, they were survival gear. In modern winter conditions, wearing a thin wool hat or hood to bed can, significantly reduce heat loss. Loose wool socks and long-sleeve base layers add warmth without restricting circulation. It's best to avoid tight clothing that compresses insulation. What makes this pre-modern bed hack valuable today is, honestly, its independence from technology. It works in apartments, rural homes, and even emergency shelters. During winter blackouts, fuel shortages, or off-grid living, this approach can, quite frankly, be the difference between restless nights and a stable core temperature. All right, so test it on the coldest nights. Measure the difference by how often you wake up and, how warm the bed feels in the morning. The results, honestly, speak for themselves. Modern heating trains us to heat rooms instead of bodies. Pre-modern people did the opposite. They heated the smallest space possible and conserved energy relentlessly. In an age of rising energy costs and unpredictable winters, this knowledge is not, just historical trivia. It is applied survival wisdom. If this guide gave you something practical you can use tonight, subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles, like the video, and leave a comment with how you're applying this method in your own winter setup. Share this with someone battling the cold right now. Knowledge only matters when it's passed on.